We know that you've had quite a busy schedule, so we appreciate you being with us this morning. We've seen that you've had quite a busy schedule. As you said, you mentioned that Bill Gates came to your office, so we appreciate you being with us today. So today we're here to talk about what it will take for Nigeria's digital economy to compete globally. For those of you who would like to know, this session promises to be an in-depth exploration of the opportunities, the challenges, and strategic priorities for Nigeria as it seeks to elevate its digital ecosystem onto the world stage. Together, we will unpack what it really takes for Nigeria to compete and lead in the fast-evolving digital economy. So, Dr. Tijani, it's wonderful to have you back on stage with us. Thank you for that illuminating keynote speech. The last time we saw, I think you said that I needed to work on my Nigerian pronunciations, so I hope I'm doing better today. So over the last few years, Nigeria's digital economy has seen bold moves. For example, the sector contributed about 17% to Nigeria's GDP in 2023, and there's been a surge in mobile internet penetration to over 60% of the population. From your perspective, what are the most critical enablers in place today that are truly shaping our digital ecosystem?
Thank you so much for the question. I think I've spoken about a number of the key enablers, and we definitely have to appreciate the investors who've put money into the telecommunications sector in Nigeria. I think we don't talk about it well enough. This is the largest sector on the continent that's attracted the most FDI to the telecommunications space. And to what I alluded to when I was talking about the GDP, you can tell that this is one sector that over time has been able to support to help strengthen our economy as well. So that infrastructure, foundational infrastructure that they've been investing in is one that I think we have to be extremely proud of. The other thing which I think is strong, again, that we don't recognize, they're quite quiet, is also NIBS, which I spoke to earlier, the interbank settlement system. Nigeria may not be the country that people like to celebrate, but their solution is actually one of the best on the African continent. And a lot of people talk about it and come to learn about it, but it's not one that is shown as a best practice. I think when you take those two things, they've given us the ability to demonstrate that digital tools and technologies can help change society for good in Nigeria, style or not. And for them, there's a single individual that typically will travel to a point where their WhatsApp will work, and they will send message to that person. That person will see the message, then take it back to the group of farmers, mostly women, and then get the information on what vegetable is available, what price are they selling it, and then the person will come back again. So you take advantage of, we take for granted what we do that we expect to be real time. You send someone a WhatsApp message, you expect them to respond immediately. If they don't respond, you pick up your WhatsApp and you call them actually because you need answer. But this is someone using the same tool, but the person communicating with them understand that that tool is going to act as if it's a snail mail that you're sending. You know, that may take 2 days before they get the message back. And we don't understand the implication of that. I think for me, the experience of the community chief that I shared when we were there, because we had an equipment there that is connected to the internet and is connected to one hospital in Abuja. And this equipment, you have all your blood pressure kits that you can use to measure. So the man wore it on, tested himself, and the result was showing on the screen of a doctor in Abuja. And the doctor popped back on the video and was speaking to the gentleman. And this is a place where they do not go to that center because they know that there's no medical doctor there. You know, they have people there who go there to open the doors. That's about it. There's really nothing they can do to support them. So when I saw that, I saw the power again of connectivity, the things that we take for granted. I'm sure we all know 1 or 2 medical doctors that we can reach out to on WhatsApp. They give us advice on what to do. Or maybe perhaps you go to ChatGPT to triage whatever your issue is before you go to the hospital. These are things that these people cannot do. And in Nigeria, there's still over 20 million of people like that without access at all. The bit of it that we also don't talk about is security. You know, we've heard about the bandits most of the time, and people will typically say, what's the police doing? They should be able to track them with their phones. But the reality is most of the bandits actually live in those communities without connectivity. So they have devices and equipment that they use to bounce their calls to be able to make calls, which means it's not linear. So it's actually quite difficult to be able to trace their exact location. You know, so for bigger reasons, there's a need for us to connect all of our communities because they become spaces that is impossible to govern. And when you have spaces that are impossible to govern, what you end up with is other people with more power, or tiny power actually, controlling spaces within your country. And for those who have traveled, I think with this job, I've had the privilege of now going into places. Our country is extremely vast. And most of our lands, there's absolutely nothing on them. The biggest portion of Nigeria is currently unoccupied.
So this speaks to the multi-sectoral impact of what connectivity could do, from a health perspective, from a banking perspective, and also financial inclusion. Speaking of ChatGPT, how many times have you used ChatGPT today?
Not today, I'm not using it. But I use it every day. For me, it's a constant. Again, I think ChatGPT is a demonstration of why we can't ignore AI. Because again, if you understand the true challenge that we have in the country, you will know that is a productivity challenge. Every of our sector is not we don't have a sector that is operating at optimum. Right? Whether you look at agriculture, banking, even banking, when you look at financial services, you look at education, you look at mining, nothing is operating at optimum. And the challenge we have with AI is that AI's biggest goal is its ability to almost skyrocket productivity levels significantly. It's incredible. If you work in consulting, for instance, you can see the disruption that AI is brought into that space. Because some papers that it will take you 2, 3, 4 weeks to produce, AI can produce them in 5 seconds. That's the reality. Of course, there will be the element of you checking that the facts are accurate, that the context is there. But when you see people who actually understand how to use generative AI, it gives you something, you tell it to go look for more. It comes back with another, you say there's nothing, there's something there that is not context, based enough. I want you to go back and add more. And it will continue to go back and forth. And the danger for developing countries and countries like Nigeria, if you take agriculture, for instance, agriculture is not operating at optimal. You take countries like Ukraine, without the war in Ukraine, Ukraine used to be a major supplier of food. Major supplier of food. If the war was not there with AI, Ukraine would be going really, really high. So the implication is that countries like ours will have to keep importing food from those countries because there won't be need for us to cultivate because they're cheaper, because productivity is higher. And the danger of that is that we're a country with the average age of 16.9. We're giving birth to 5 million new people every year, and we have significant unemployment. So if you keep importing everything that you eat, how are you going to be able to create jobs for the young people all over the nation?
No, absolutely. It just shows how interconnected everything is. So I'd like us to look globally for a second. Nigeria is benchmarked against trends like sovereign innovation funds. If you look at Kenya's Climate Innovation Center, for example, cloud infrastructure and national digital ID systems that you already talked about. We can look at Ghana's Ghana card, which is quite notable, I would say. Where do you see Nigeria holding its own, and where must we accelerate to keep up or leap ahead?
I think in all of what you've described, I'll pick on the cloud element, which I think is a major part of the future of the digital economy. Because literally everything is now, and we continue to be so based on the cloud. And I think that's an area where we've done well, but not well enough. And I don't see why Nigeria should be lagging behind in cloud computing, and also ensuring that we have hyperscalers in the country. Because of what I said earlier, when you look at the population of the West African region, we're already almost half of the entire region itself. We have the biggest pool of innovators here and entrepreneurs that are building solutions. The government is now investing in more digital infrastructure, which means we're going to be generating more data. But I think what we saw when we analyzed the situation and the reason why the hyperscalers are not coming is that we've not intentionally focused on deepening the support that they require to be able to establish in the country, which is why we now have a memo that is going to the Executive Council, which is focused on setting up a national data park. And that national data park, we're setting it up hopefully at Egbe, where you have the single largest privately managed power plants in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. I know we have energy issues, but it's still the largest privately managed power plant. And the goal is that we can now be more intentional about how we drive private money towards increasing the output of that plant. But at the same time, Egbe is a location that is close to water, which means for cooling purposes, there's already the water there. We can also explore perhaps hydro form of energy that can also help achieve the clean energy agenda for hyperscalers. But I think the most important one is also then the fact that we can tap our 8 subsea cables and actually to Egbe give the strong backing that connectivity to the data centers will not be the issue. And lastly, it gives us a chance to plug the final gap, which is the fact that there's currently no cable connecting Nigeria to the US, where most of the data services are coming from. All of our cables are through Portugal. So we have to go to Europe before we go to the rest of the world. But if we have a national data park, we have a unique opportunity to go through Brazil, on the other side, and get a cable down to Nigeria. And if we're able to do that, the implication is that Nigeria is going to become the truly connectivity hub for West Africa, which means that missing element. A lot of people talk about how data center investment is going more towards Kenya. I think we can provide the incentive to now encourage that to happen more in Nigeria for the West African region, and perhaps a significant portion of the African continent as well.
When do you think we can expect that kind of cable to be, or that pathway to be a reality for Nigeria?
Based on what we're doing, World Bank is leading our round for the fiber optic cable. Our goal is that by Q4 into Q1 next year, we should start digging ground and laying that cable. What I've described now in terms of the National Data Park, the memo is going to the Federal Executive Council the moment we're back in Abuja, and we can then give a clear timeline on when that will be done. But until you get the memo, you can't actually do the start implementation.
All right, I think we're all looking forward to that for sure.
Me too.
So Nigeria is one of the few African countries that has an active digital strategy, and I think that's a great thing from your ministry. You've prioritized verticals like AI, which is projected to add 15 billion to Nigeria's economy by the year 2030. Fintech, health tech, and the creative economy, which is currently valued at $10 billion. What inspired this focus, and how are these sectors being positioned for global relevance?
I think for me, the way I always answer that question is I never would want a situation where my kids in 5 years' time will say to me, you were the Minister of Digital Economy, how come Nigeria is not anywhere near the AI movement? I don't want it to happen. And the reason is that there's evidence to back that AI is going to influence what we think, and how things are done. There's evidence to back that. And if that's going to be the case, it's not going to be sufficient for us to focus on what we refer to as the wicked problems alone. Poverty is an issue. We need to enlighten and put more kids in school. We cannot say because that problem is there or because we don't have enough electricity, we'll wait and come back to artificial intelligence later. That's not something we can do. So for me, the inspiration is that we're a nation that is blessed with talent. Our leaders must only take decisions that will ensure that tomorrow can be guaranteed and tomorrow is sustainable. Because everything you're seeing today, the decisions were taken last year or 2 years ago. Development doesn't just happen like that. For you to truly make things happen, when the president came and said we must reform, and he took the decision on reform, it was painful immediately. But we can now see this year companies coming back. Many companies claim they were leaving Nigeria, but today companies are reporting profit. That didn't happen immediately when the reform was done. So for me, it's the same thing with artificial intelligence. If we think we're going to be ready for AI in 5 years, 6 years, or 7 years, we must lay the foundation today to ensure that we can participate in 5 or 6 years. Because if we delay, when we start is when the foundation will start. And we'll postpone the benefit as well for society.
So it's about having vision and, enduring temporary pain for pleasure in the future.
I think so. And I think for countries like Nigeria, there's absolutely no way we can wake up and develop without pain. I think that's the honest truth. It's impossible. You can't wake up and develop without pain. If you don't build what you need, you can't wake up today and say, I have my home that belongs to me, without either laying the foundation for the house, building it to the point where the home is ready, or saving the money and getting the mortgage to buy the house from someone. So something must be done before we start to benefit and see the Nigeria that we all truly want.
It's a step-by-step process. And I must say, I think from your ministry, I do enjoy getting the communication updates. I think you guys do a good job at letting people know where you're at with your different projects. So congratulations on that. So speaking of 3 to 5 years, if Nigeria is to truly compete on the global stage, considering that Africa's digital economy is expected to reach 712 billion by 2025, what 3 mindset, infrastructure, or policy shifts do you think are the most critical at the moment?
I think the largest one will be talent. We have to put policies in place to ensure that we can strengthen the platforms where our young people will go to acquire the skill set that they require to function in this space. I think there's no question as to whether Nigeria will play actively in that space. Nigeria will play actively in this space. Because fortunately for us, we have the very youthful population. And these are the guys that will form the basis of the workforce that will drive that growth that we want to see. But unfortunately, just by having young people is not enough. They must be trained. I always tell people, the current ecosystem that we see, I don't think is being powered by up to 50,000 people. When you look at the technology ecosystem in Nigeria, I'll be surprised if we have more than 50,000 engineers. I'll be truly surprised. Wow. And for a country our size, that's too small. If we're being honest with ourselves, a significant portion of our technology workforce is still being outsourced. It's still being outsourced. There's still a lot of development, a lot of softwares that are not built locally. And we're also facing a situation where, because our people are extremely hardworking, the field that we have are now also very attractive to foreign companies. The local companies are actually struggling to be able to build a proper, organization with significant workforce that can build things that will get us to where we need to be. So I think the biggest thing that as a nation we must prioritize is talent. We have to be able to build this talent. We have to invest in them. We have to invest in infrastructure that will allow our talent to be able to express their creativity. I think those things they're extremely important. So that will be one for me. I think the other two, we're already doing well on them. The second, rather, we're already doing well on them. But perhaps we need to deepen and structure the investment that we put in those areas. And for me, it's the foundational infrastructure that I've spoken about. If we can get Nigeria to a point where nearly every corner of this country is connected, I think not only is our digital economy going to grow locally, its contribution to the region is also going to become significant. It's going to become significant because it means that we can set up companies that can serve the entire continent, that can be based in Bayelsa or be based in Abeokuta or somewhere in Kano. And we have the infrastructure that is needed, we have the talent that is needed, and also push that forward. And the last one, which I think is the third one, is of course going to be a policy. Many people don't know that we actually don't have a single piece of legislation that is focused on supporting the digital economy in Nigeria. So what we've had so far are tiny bits of policies here and there pulling together to drive the digital economy forward. We should ideally have a piece of legislation that is focused on the strong requirements that you must push forward to be able to drive the economy, which is why we're spending significant amounts of time pushing our digital economy and e-governance bill. It's the first bill in the history of Nigeria that has traveled to every state of the Federation. So it's actually physically traveled to every state of the Federation to get feedback from stakeholders so that we can be sure that the content of that bill is something that is inclusive and serves the needs of our people.
Thank you. So I have 3 more questions for you, and then we'll be coming to the... Hope that's not too many. It's very short questions. And then we'll be coming to the audience to take 2 questions. So if you have a question, please start thinking about it now. So you mentioned earlier the partnership with Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation for the $7.5 million partnership. What is the role of PPPs in scaling the innovation when it comes to the digital economy in Nigeria?
I think, like I said earlier, there's literally not much you can do without the private sector. Not much you can do, which is why I think government's clarity around ensuring that policies are tied to real actions, they're not just something you put on paper that doesn't lead to anything, is extremely important. So for us, in what you're saying, actually that partnership is not a money for the government. Many people don't know that. So that money is actually to Lagos Business School to help facilitate, right? To help facilitate the adoption of artificial intelligence solution, mainly in government. So if we see a startup founder that has built something exciting, it's not very straightforward, the path to go through to get that solution into, say, Ministry of Health or Ministry of Education, for instance. There's a sort of partnership that you need to build. There are systems that you need to change. The goal there is that Lagos Business School will become that entity that is doing that facilitation between those who are building solutions that have been tested, that we can now take into government to deliver services that can help scale that people want to see in society.
Fantastic. So I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk about startups, because before your time as minister, you played a huge role in the Nigerian startup ecosystem. Could you share with us 1 or 2, because we're having a pitch competition later on in the afternoon. Are there any startups that you think that we should be watching out for? Any Nigerian startups that you're really excited about right now?
I shouldn't be doing that. No, I shouldn't be doing that. So I won't talk about a specific startup. I think what I would say is how we should learn, and I've alluded to this earlier, how we should learn from the financial services space and the success that we've recorded in that area. And how we can then translate that into other sectors, because I think that's where opportunity lies, even for investors. I do not believe that the startup ecosystem is learning enough on the things that actually lead to the growth that we see. I don't think we pay attention to it. I think we get carried away by the venture capital excitement, how to build the startups. That's what we get excited about. But we actually don't talk enough about the things that inspire the growth that we need to see in the companies that we invest in for them to become bankable. We don't talk enough about it, which I think most of us we're not getting the much returns that we should be getting. Because ecosystem matters, right? and if you look at countries that are doing really well, you build a startup in the US, the ecosystem to help startups thrive exists. If you get what I mean, I think I made an example of this at a Tech Point event almost 4 years ago, where you build a company. I built a furniture company, right? I want to sell furniture online. Why do I have to be the one worrying about logistics? I shouldn't have to. In some countries, I shouldn't even have to worry about packaging. In a lot of countries, I don't even have to manufacture. I just need to design and give it to a company that will manufacture. They'll give it to the guy that will package. I will not even maintain the warehouse. So what I'll end up doing is designing and maintaining the web platform through which I'm selling. Because in those ecosystems, there's a complete value chain to deliver what they need to see. And I keep saying the biggest lesson for the startup ecosystem is in the financial services space. But we're not focusing on the actual lesson there. Because the we see there is not been made happen just by the startup founders. It's by the infrastructure that was built to allow the startup founders to build what they need to be. That's why we've not seen anything else in any other sector that will rival what we're seeing in the fintech space. We've not seen it. The day we can fix that for healthcare is when we will know that Nigerians actually pay for healthcare. If they don't, we won't be seeing all the mushroom hospitals and the chemists that we have all over the country. I've been in EdTech for a long time. We've not seen any significant success there. We've seen a lot of people raise significant money, try to build in the EdTech space, failed. It's not because we can't monetize education technology. Because when you think about it, we're one of the nations with the highest number of private schools, right? We even have what they call low-cost private schools in Nigeria. That's to show you that even the poor people are happy to pay for education. That's why you have low-cost private schools. But the problem is education is not something that you can just say you put on an app and automatically people have it. No, affordable devices, connectivity needs to happen. And there's still interoperability as well. Because if you can't port that learner's data from one solution to the other, it's not going to fly. So I think for me, my challenge to the new leaders of the ecosystem, I think one of them is in the room. My challenge is that let's learn. We didn't do that work. We brought the excitement of startup into the ecosystem, and they built on the work that folks like the ATM consortium did in the past. Michelle, the works that the folks at NIBS did, we built on top of that. So we need people to do the same in education, in healthcare. And if we're not seeing those people, perhaps some of us will need to step down a little to help build the foundation so that other startups can build on top of that foundation as well.
So if I hear you correctly, it's about further collaboration and also the exploration of the value chains for startups to be able to thrive. Okay. So I have one last question, and it's a less serious question. It's a bit of a fun question. I know that you get to meet with all sorts of global leaders. But if you could have dinner with one global tech leader, past or present, to talk about Nigeria's digital future, who would it be and why? I mean, I know it's a difficult question because you just hung out with Bill Gates, but who would that person be?
I think funny enough, you'll be Elon.
Elon Musk.
Yeah. I think you'll be Elon, yeah.
And why is that?
I think Elon is sitting on something that has the potential to help push Nigeria forward a bit. Actually, not one thing, about two things. One is, again, many people don't pay attention to the fact that Nigeria has one of the largest stock of the best quality lithium in the world, right? And there's no digital economy without batteries. We know that, right? Most things must be powered. Europe is positioning heavily for it. Part of the reason why China is able to play in that space is because of battery. It's a major component of the digital economy and the entire green economy as well. But we have this in a massive quantity, and nothing has been. Well, a lot is being done with it. The current administration, Mr. Alake is, but since that is focused on really helping to monetize and make sense out of this. But I think, again, it's the kind of thing that the startup ecosystem in Nigeria, because that sector is, if you go to Sweden, I think they have one of their most celebrated companies now is in the battery space, because it's also considered to be, a technology space. There's massive opportunity to build wealth there. My hope is that perhaps he can invest, or maybe some of us can find ways to actually start to also build companies that can play in the battery space. The second one is in space technology, satellite. Again, that has significant implications for the digital economy, but also the safety of any nation as well. Satellite plays a significant role. Whether it's in Earth observation satellite or communication satellite, there's a lot that societies do with them to be able to progress. You can think of what's possible in security, right? When you go to the north, you see how flat some of these places are, and you wonder why we're struggling to be able to cater for it. Again, satellite has serious work to do there. And also some of our difficult to reach location. Right. Many people don't know that today, Starlink, I think, is now the second largest ISP in Nigeria. Yeah? And this is what I always tell people. For those who say, we don't need fiber, why are you investing in it? Nigerians can, some people believe that the Nigerians who can afford connectivity, that they already have it. But I always say to them, if that's the case, how come Nigerians are paying for Starlink? That is extremely expensive. It means that whatever they have is not good enough. Because, satellite is actually not the best way to deliver connectivity. It's not the fastest form of delivering connectivity. But because we don't have the best, that's why people are consuming it. So I think there's a whole lot of conversations that we need to have around that as well. So I think, there's a lot to discuss with Elon. So that would be my pick.
Okay, so Elon, if you're watching, the Honorable Minister wants to have dinner with you. All right, so that brings us to the end of our fireside chat. Please put your hands together for the Honorable Minister, Dr. Bosun. Sorry, you need to kindly sit down. We're taking some questions from the audience. So we have time for 2 questions from the audience. Please kindly put your hand up, and an usher will come directly to you and take your question. If you have any question, okay, we have a question over there at the back. I don't know if anyone can see the gentleman at the back over there. He has his hand up. Can somebody get him a mic? Can we get him a mic, please?
Good morning, Honorable Minister, and thanks for the excellent lecture. I've been following the artificial intelligence sector for a while, and I'm impressed with the work. Kudos to you and the government. But my focus is on the AI safety. I think it's one of the most important part of artificial intelligence today, and in fact, we are approaching the 2027 election now. So we can face issues like fake news, misinformation, and stuff like that. So I want to know if there are guardrails by the government that is focusing on this, because as much as we have good actors, we also have, bad actors. So are there policies that is guaranteeing AI safety as we advance in this particular space? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. Nice hearing you today. So I just want to, you've already said it about the e-government bill that is going around. So are we going to see the end of it soon? When are we going to see the e-government bill with respect to digitalized IDs and all that, so that we can easily port our data, things like ID cards, driver's license, immigration stuff, Those are the things e-government should solve. Okay, so when are we going to see it? When is it going to have fruition? Yeah, what timeline, like when are we expecting it?
I think the timeline is, like I said, we had the opportunity of just sending the bill to the National Assembly and passing it, because we are fortunate now to have both the 2 committees at the Senate and the lower house being led by technology professionals. So it's been quite easy to get things through the House for them to give their feedback. But we wanted to ensure that this is not just something that government is put together and just sent through, which is why we took it across the entire country. I always expect people to give us a round of applause for that, but I don't know. Because I think it's a difficult task to do it. And in my opinion, I think is how bills should be done. People should be given the opportunity to know because there's so many bills with a lot of things that are implicating that Nigerians don't get to know about. You just hear that they've been passed. So I'm hoping that we can push this to become the standard. So that's what's delayed it. I think we're fortunate. DOA was one of the law firms that worked on it, actually. That's probably why they've invited me to this event. So we expect that there's going to be final gathering in Abuja. So that's for the different MDAs within government to come together and look at all the feedback that we've received and see that everything is in line with what government is also doing, And the goal, I think we're going to do that in May. Well, as you know, May is when we celebrate our second year in office. So we've been busy cutting ribbons across Nigeria. So we expect that will be done probably in June or July. So my hope is that before the end of summer, that this should be passed and passed to law, and we should have it operational. I think to the second question on artificial intelligence, it's a moving target. It's a moving target. Safety in AI is about building guardrails, but you know, building guardrails is not just something you put on paper. You put it on paper, it doesn't mean these actors you're talking about will follow it. So for me, I think two things are important to ensure that guardrails are implemented and they head the way artificial intelligence evolves in a society. One is ensuring that you have an ecosystem and a governance structure that is inclusive. It's it to just be about government. Because some of the areas in which you're going to get undercut by AI will be through private companies, right? So it's important that the private sector is part of whatever governance structure that we put in place. That even the thinking around the guardrails that we put in place, that it comes from a collective perspective, which is why when I mentioned earlier that our AI strategy is one of the most inclusive in the world. People don't understand where that is coming from, because to develop our AI strategy, for those who may not be aware, we actually had to build an AI model to identify all Nigerians working in AI all over the world. All over the world. So what we did was we took all the academic publications, artificial intelligence for the last, I think, 20, 30 years. We scraped the names of the authors, and we used a name library to identify those who are of Nigerian descent. That's what we did. And we then went another level. We looked at those journals that appeared in 5-star rated, those articles that appeared in 5-star rated journals. So that's how we whittled down to those people. We then put it online. So we got a lot of these technology companies also sending us people who work, because the 100 people were from the academic, so we got people who work in the private sector, and we took them to Abuja. Had about 150 people in attendance, and they spent a week shaping the foundation of what is now the Nigerian AI strategy. So we believe they own it. So two things we've done on top of that is to also, I was able to get money from Luminate, which is part of a media network, to start what we now call the AI Collective. Again, when we got the money, we didn't keep it in government. We gave it to DSN, Data Science Nigeria, the NESG, a part of the NESG, Lagos Business School is in that as well, and another civil society organization. So they've been given that resources, 1.5 million, to actually animate the AI ecosystem in Nigeria. All the money is with them. We don't have the money with us. But we got money. I wrote the proposal personally. And lastly, we decided that we have to safeguard the future of AI in Nigeria as well. And it's not enough to keep it in the hands of government. We may have a president after this one who doesn't see the need for it, or a minister who doesn't understand it. So the president and the executive council is approved that we should set up a national AI trust. And these trustees are 10 well-known, respected individuals who can ensure that Nigeria will continue. So if you look at a picture of Bill Gates in my office, you see that hike, Imokwede was there. That's one of the people that are in that trust. And their job is to ensure that Nigeria is doing right with artificial intelligence. That's all we've done. But we still require that the ecosystem backs us. I still think education is one of the surest ways that we can protect people, that our people have to have digital literacy skills so that they know and they can decipher what to engage and what not to engage.
Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for the Honorable Minister, Dr. Bosun Tijani. We're going to take a picture, and then we'll ask the partners of DOA to join us and any other dignitaries that are here with us today. Thank you so very much for your time.
Essay, please dance.
All right, great. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together one more time for the Honorable Minister. I hope that you enjoyed that fireside chat. We are going to take a 10-minute tea break. So we're going to start off with the tables at the back and then make our way forward. So please use this time to refresh yourself, grab some tea, grab some coffee, and we will be back in 10 minutes. Thank you so very much. Okay, so the first row, you may have your seats, and food and drinks will be brought to you. But for everyone else, feel free to go to the back and help yourself to some tea and some snacks. Thank you. are going to get started in the next 2 minutes. So please kindly take your seats so that we can commence the event once again. I do hope that you're enjoying the day and that you are enjoying your tea and snacks as well. But we do have one more panel, a pitch competition, and some closing remarks to get through. So please kindly take your seats so we can continue the event. Thank you. If our panelists for the first panel could kindly come to the front of the room so that we can commence the event. Oh, perfect. Everyone's here. Very organized panel, I see. Great. So our next panel is on innovation and regulation, finding common ground. And I think that this addresses one of the most critical dynamics in our ecosystem. Forgive me. Our next panel is on tech profitability playbook. We're trying to identify who's really winning. And it's really a power-packed panel discussion for the day. This session will be expertly moderated by Alex-Adedipe, who is a venture builder.
Alex-Adedipe is a visionary builder and venture operator with over 12 years of experience, turning ideas into scalable companies. She is the founder of Koteri Builders, a community design and execution firm helping companies build loyal, thriving ecosystems. In 2021, she founded Trainlands, a boutique talent sourcing company specializing in marketing and operations roles for startups and SMEs. She now supports early-stage founders as a startup advisor at ALX Ventures and the Tech My Biz Accelerator, offering guidance across fundraising, product development, and go-to-market execution. Currently, Esohe is a VC fellow at Dream VC, a venture capital institute building investor capacity in Africa's tech ecosystem. Dream VC's community collectively manages over $6.6 billion in assets. Ladies and gentlemen, please a round of applause for Alex-Adedipe.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Bosun Alake, who's the Commissioner for Innovation, Science and Technology at Lagos State. Let's put our hands together for him, please. Very happy that you're here with us. So our moderator is actually going to call up her panelists. So tech team, no need to read the bios. She'll do that herself. Thank you very much.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so I would like to call my esteemed panel to join me on stage. We have Dr. Dotun, we have Mr. Diplanka, we have Mr. Mudiaga, and we have Ms. Ashim and Ms. Biola. Please, can you give them a round of applause? It's not working. Oh, I have a mic. All right. We can just do man, woman, man, just to create some kind of. I was thinking we could have a guy here and then. Oh, yes, we are. Oh, okay, makes sense. Can I keep that? All right. Okay, are we all settled now? Yes. So we cut that short so that we could do 1 minute intros instead of that. So we'll just start from the lady.
Good afternoon, everyone. I feel like we have the hardest job, interrupting the tea time, but Thank you for having me. I wanted to just quickly say a big thank you to DOA for putting this on. A few years ago, TMT conferences were only done by international organizations. So to see this going 4 years in a row, a big congratulations to the team. My name is Biola Alabi. I'm a venture partner at Delta 40. We are a VC fund and a venture studio investing in clean energy, investing in EV, mobility. We're also investing in fintech and
Biola Alabi is a trailblazing leader in business.
What the fuck?
Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank DOA for putting this together. My name is Mudiaga Mo. I'm CEO of Matter, a digital marketplace for chemicals, raw materials, ingredients, and commodities.
Hi everyone, my name is Dipankar, founder and CEO Omni Retail, here to share more from our experience in scaling a profitable business. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Totsun Ulu Poroku, partner at Ventures Platform. We invest in tech businesses that are building the future of Africa. We pride ourselves in discovering founders and companies before they become obvious. And one of our companies, Dipankar Omni Retail, Paystack, MoneyPoint, and a few others. And I'm looking forward to the conversation here today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashim Megonjobi. I'm the managing partner at Actera Capital. We're an investment fund investing across Africa, sector agnostically, in disruptive tech businesses that we believe are going to disrupt how we do things in Africa and move prosperity for the continent further.
All right, thank you so much for that short and precise introduction. Our panel topic is tech profitability, playbook, who's really winning, right? And I'm to set the foundation for what profitability meant. I would say that a basic definition from my economist background is gross revenue minus cost of sales. You know, you get to gross profits, and then from there you get net profits. That's like basic economics, right? And then we have the conversation about margins. Is it 5%? Is it 10? Is it 15? Or are you able to do a miracle and do 100%, and we need to invest in you at that point, right? So that is profit. But in terms of how it's played in a local context, I would like to start from the founders in the room, who are really the ones in the marketplace getting this profit, right? So I like the way you pass the mic. Like, I would like to hear it from you first. Like, to talk to us about business. You know, you play in a real sector, which is a very, very hard place to play and to disrupt with technology. So can you run us through how you were able to decide, you know, this is a good business case and venture in profitably, you know, and scale your business?
Thank you for that. So like you said, we play in the real sector. And because we support primarily manufacturers, right, across multiple verticals, and if you understand the manufacturing industry, whatever raw material you need today, you will need next month, and you will continue to require. So that kind of makes the subject of profitability a bit easier, right? Because from the moment you start your first supply, you know that you're going to have recurring revenue month after month, right? And you can look at it from multiple perspectives, because then if you look at the context of the Nigerian ecosystem, we're a venture-backed company. You look at the possibility of Naira fluctuation, even though the Naira has been quite stable for a while, that has really, really helped. But in instances where you have fluctuating exchange rates, you then have to look at the issue of how do you stabilize your company against the costs that you expend. So then you look at profitability not just from the perspective of recurring business, but also the kind of revenues that you generate. So you then begin to look at not just Naira revenues, you look at getting FX revenues as well. I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
So I find this topic very interesting. When we start a business, everyone who starts the business, joins the business, their core objective is to solve a problem, but also to make money.
Correct.
And the idea of making money is directly related to profitability. So if you are running a business that is not profitable, there is no practical way it can be sustainable. It's like the example of leaky bucket. You can have a leaky bucket, but it is going to be tough for you to continuously fetch water and fill water because you're leaking the water in the process. We can be a venture-backed platform, venture-backed platforms solving a real problem, but you can use ventures money to showcase the solution that you have built, and after some time, they will only fund you to bring in growth. They would not fund losses. So I think the idea of bringing in profitability, the idea of ensuring you use the investment to bring the right unit economics and solve the problem for a limited set of customers to prove there is scalability and sustainability in your business model is super essential. The sooner you can hit, the sooner you can come closer to profitability or build a path to profitability, the more organized is your business, the better visibility in the growth of the businesses. So I think that's how we look at it.
Thank you very much for that. I would like to ask Dr. Dotun a question, and it's focused on your experience as an investor. What separates profitable startups from those that are merely surviving?
Thanks. I'll answer that question by piggybacking on something. So, if you look at, and startup is unique in the sense that they're not just like traditional businesses, and it's not because they are smaller or bigger. It's just startup is a business that is trying to find a repeatable, scalable business model. In the quest for that, that's why startup is different from SME. Not all SMEs are startup, and they shouldn't be. And in the quest for that, you are looking at three types of profitability, and we need to differentiate them. There is the margin profitability or margin economics, which is what I'm selling it cheaper than what I'm selling it cheaper for the price than what I'm getting. So I'm making money every time I sell that product or service. Very fundamental. You have to be able to sell cheap, buy cheap and sell high. Then there is the EBITDA economics, which is what I'm paying for this business, I'm making money at the end of the day, right? And that's a big one. Most SMEs have to do that or else you die. But it's different from startup. Then there's the unit economics, which is very important, that the amount I'm using to acquire the customer is cheaper than what I'm making per unit of customers. And that is very important, so that you need to first of all get the unit economics right. Get the profitability right, margin economics right, and that's fundamental to the business model. Then the unit economics, which is my cost of acquisition, CAC, is lower in multiples compared to my lifetime value. Then the EBITDA economics, which a lot of PE we care about a lot. Most startups should not care about that at the beginning. And that's why a lot of people miss it. You don't care about that at the beginning. You care about the unit economics and the margin economics. Because if you're a startup, you should grow faster than what you are paying people over time. Because the scale will come in, we kick in. If your growth is not proportional to how much you're spending for your EBITDA, then that's a problem. You are not a scalable business. But the margin, the profitability of the business, it's not a thing I will care too much when I'm investing in your company. That you are not profitable EBITDA level. That's not my problem. My concern is there a path to very good unit economics here? And it's your profit margin. Your margin economics is solid. Now you can see a startup that is losing money in their first 1 year, but their unit economics is solid, their margin is solid. They're a great business. The banker's business is one of the kind that is profitable in its scale. But it took a bit of time, and we were there together as a journey because we understood the unit economics of the business and the margin economics. On the board, we track that normally. And that's very important for startups to understand. So the difference between startups that are struggling and the ones that are not is not actually the EBITDA. And at the EBITDA level is great because you've proven something. But it's your unit economics. If you're 5x LTV, that is, you cost $1 to acquire a customer and $5 from them over a short period, you are better than a company that is doing 2x unit economics, but profitable in the EBITDA. That guy will struggle compared to you. And that's very important to differentiate those three economics strata.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dotun. I would like to ask Ashim a question about what would you say in this current climate is an investable startup? So when an investor says, this startup, is an attractive business, I think I would like to invest. What would you say are those top 3 markers that would jump at you?
Thank you. I think, first of all, that differs from investor to investor. So, okay. Can everybody hear me or not so well? Yeah? Okay. I was saying that I think that differs from investor to investor. So there is not one copy-paste answer for this. For us at Octera, we look at probably 2 or 3 key metrics. The first is the founder or the founding team themselves. Investing in a startup especially is a long-term, can be a long-term relationship. So you want to ensure that, these are people that you can work with and that they can work with you. You share some sort of values or DNA alignment with them. It's really key. They're gritty, they're hardworking, all of those things. And they understand the business they're in. They're, excited about it. They, want to fix this business. Mudi and I were talking about his business a bit earlier, and you can feel the tangible, excitement that he has and just wanting to go, grind and hunt for the business every day. You do need that because building a business is not easy. Building a startup is not easy either. The other thing that we look at, and my Egbon over there has already said that, is does this business sort of make sense from an economics perspective, right? Do the unit economics make sense? And do the numbers just check out? As we like to say, is the math mathing? And if it isn't mathing, then for us it may not be the right business. And the last one really is around, is this a product or a solution that is solving a challenge or a problem that is in fact, repeatable, that is scalable, and that is relevant. It may be something that's repeatable, it may be something that's scalable, but it may not be relevant in 2 months' time, in 18 months' time, right? So the Honorable Minister earlier spoke a lot about, policy and landscape and how they're thinking 5, 10, 20 years into the future. Oftentimes, as founders, we've got to look at that as well. So as investors, we look at that and say, is this actually something that is relevant not just today, but also, in the near term?
Thank you so much. I have a question for all panelists. And please don't just mention the big sectors. So the question is, which sectors, I would say verticals, do you think are currently printing money? And which ones are burning money right now? So which sectors do you think are currently generating, very profitable margins and are growing really fast from a commercial point of view? And which sectors are burning cash, acquiring users, but their books don't look like there's a lot of money in this business?
Thank you. So, I think taking into consideration all the foundations of what makes for a good company, why, I almost feel like the question we should be asking should be slightly different in a sense of, when you think about what the minister said earlier, is that there are some foundational infrastructural businesses that need to be built. And the question is this an infrastructural business that other businesses are going to come and build on top of? So yes, we can easily say fintech because we know that, that's everywhere, that's been published. And we could say fintechs are minting money. But that's because there was a foundation that was built for all the different fintechs to come and build on top. And I think what we're building to, what we now need to do is say, what companies are building foundational businesses? Is this the right business? Do I have the stamina to go all the way with this company? And should I invest in that? And where am I in my process of investing? We call it deployment. If you're at the end of your deployment, you might not want to invest in a company that is foundational, that is going to take a 5-year journey for you to build. And so I think that we're now in a place where we're looking at sectors that are sustaining our society. So for example, I think a bunch of us just accosted Muda because he didn't allow us to invest in his company when we wanted to. And so one of the things is, it's a foundational business. Who are the people that are going to be building on top of that? One of the things we invest in is we invest in clean energy. Clean energy is a very long-term, capital-intensive business. So what is important to us is, can this business get access to working capital? Ashim and I were talking about working capital facilities and how we're becoming more and more creative about getting working capital, because now we're in those businesses that have to have some assets. So once again, 2 years ago, if you asked us, everyone is like, oh, asset-light businesses that can grow fast. But now we've come back to another stage where we have to build, and those companies that build foundations are the ones that in 5 years, we're gonna sit here and say they're minting money. So I think that's probably, I guess that's the way I see that's where I see where we are in the ecosystem. Thank you.
Okay, does Dr. Dotun want to add to that?
So I'm going to twist the answer rather than saying sector, and I think Bill has done justice to that. I'll say, because I looked at lots of sector, we're sector agnostic as well, and I looked at lots of verticals that we can invest in. But I've come to a conclusion recently, and this is more applicable to Nigeria or Sub-Saharan Africa. The business model that make money and are making money now is just one type that will make money for a long time. And not because others will not, they will, but the one that would really be, that are making money in the last 10 years or thereabout and becoming unicorns. It's a business model that, and for entrepreneurs in the room, if you want to get that, it's a business model that enables other small entrepreneurs to make money. More than 70 or 80% of the Nigerian economy is informal. If you can build a business model that enable other people to make money in their own small business, you're going to build a unicorn within a short time. 8 out of 9 unicorns in Africa have that business model. Paystack, Flutterwave, MoneyPoint, Time Bank, TMT Land, Wave, all of them have this in common. They enable small businesses, which are individuals, by the way. All the small businesses, they're individuals. They enable other individuals to make money. And they're intrinsic to their business model. They're not just painkillers, by the way. They're not even just painkillers. They are life support. They're the engine and the oxygen of those businesses. If you look today, if Paystack, Flutterwave stop working today, MoneyPoint, there'll be riots in this country. Because people will not be able to pay their bills. People will not be able to get money, daily money. And how did we get there? 10 years ago, it wasn't like that. But how did we get there? Those companies came in, and Omni-Retail will get there too, where if Omni-Retail stop working, we're all in trouble because we're not going to be able to get our daily stuff. How did we get there? All small businesses that were using these guys dependent on them for their life support. That is the model that will continue to make money for a while. And then, by the way, I differentiate between business model. There's business model that enable other people to make money. There is one where you buy and sell. So you make money by buying and selling. And there's the one that just creates efficiency. So the SaaS models. But the one that make money the most in Africa is the one that enable other people to make money.
Thank you. Dipaka was so, yes, you can
Yes, I
share,
want to
please.
add to that. I really like what both of them said. One was the foundational base, and one is the accelerator base. You're accelerating the growth of other businesses on the platform. What we have also noticed is on the similar lines, most of the companies, whether you talk about Move, whether you talk about companies in other digital economies, these are companies who are bringing different pools of physical infrastructure or physical assets and digitizing the use of it. So there are trucks available in various parts of the country, and it's difficult to access that pool of trucks because they don't have a digital identity. If you can access that, there is warehousing space available, and we digitize that. But similarly, the identity businesses, there are people. We are one of the largest populations on the continent. There are people everywhere, but once you digitize their entity, their identity, you can use that in various business models. So if you are digitizing a pool of physical asset by bringing it together on a platform and giving it identity or creating the digital infrastructure, I think there is a huge opportunity for that digital infrastructure to be monetized. And like Dotun mentioned before, majority of the businesses who do this digitization in the first 2 years, 3 years are doing the hard work, are doing the heavy lifting. When they have digitized a substantial portion of that pool, that's when you start seeing a scalable, profitable stream coming into the business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very quickly wanted to add to the cash printing versus cash burning sector question. I don't believe that there's any sectors that are printing money and sectors that are burning money. I fundamentally disagree with that. I think there's companies that are printing money and companies that are burning money. And that very much is oftentimes driven by some of the fundamentals and foundational things that we have discussed already. So, of course, everybody talks about fintech. 8 out of the 9 unicorns in Africa have all been in the fintech space. Yeah, sure, of course, it's a sector that is doing very well. However, there are still companies in the fintech space that are very much burning cash or not doing very well, right? So I think we've got to be very careful when we look at sectors and not make blanket statements, so that, founders in the room especially, don't think that if you're not in the fintech space, you can't make it, right? Because there's lots of opportunity out there building on, these foundations and still build a business that, hopefully will be printing money for you and for the economy.
Thank you. Do you want to share on this topic?
I think everything has pretty much been said. But I also think that the intersection of the foundation, right, and the ability to enable, to aggregate, like Dipankar said, is very critical. And I'll give the example of our business and what we do. You look at the fact that you have AFTA that is trying to unite the ability for the movement of goods across Africa. You have the very recent move to the adoption of the procurement of critical minerals on a global perspective. And then you have a business that has the ability to take advantage of those two aspects by providing raw materials to manufacturers, not just across the continent, but who want to uptake from the continent. The point I try to make is that when you look at how policies are created, the ability to build a business that has the ability to take advantage of those policies tends to create profitability, like the minister was saying.
Thank you so much for sharing. I would like to talk a bit about policy and regulation. We had the Honorable Minister share about what the government has done, and beyond what his office has done, the infrastructure that has been created over the years, that is allowing some other companies to now be successful because we have that infrastructure. So we know that the fintech space, especially the FX and the crypto space, is a highly regulated space, right? And I know that you have a play of embedded finance in the work that you both do. I would like you to share a bit of how do you currently navigate, FX regulations and FX exposures, because you play in multiple markets, so how do you manage that as a Nigerian entity?
Okay. With regards to FX exposure, it's a bit difficult. And I will say this: in 2023, I believe, was the beginning. No, sorry, the beginning of 2024. Everybody knows what happened to the dollar when the dollar was floated, when the naira was floated against the dollar. It was a very difficult period because we're a venture-backed entity who has investment in USD, but at the same time, we looked at a situation where we were increasing in revenue from a naira perspective, but decreasing in revenue from a dollar perspective. And the most practical step that we could take to make sure that we weren't killed basically by that period of time. I mean, it's completely changed now. You have a period of time where the naira is incredibly stable, but the most fundamental step we could take was to expand out of Nigeria, right? So focus on markets with more stable FX regimes and focus on exports out of Nigeria. It was the most practical thing we could do. And it was very fundamental to our survival. It really helped us throughout last year. It kind of stabilized our business, and it actually created a platform from which we could grow very aggressively. So I mean, when you look at policies and things that come out from government, you have to be able to respond quickly. You have to be nimble enough to respond quickly enough for the survival of your business.
Thank you so much. I would like to speak to Ashim in terms of your perspective as an investor. Are there sectors that you are like, no, the regulatory exposure here is not what I think I want to get involved with? I like what you're trying to do, but I'm looking at this thing 360 and I don't see how you can win.
That's an interesting question. We haven't yet identified a single specific sector that we would say we won't touch. I think what we do is that we look at the regulatory landscape, policy decisions, just really staying close to what's going on in the markets, in government and policy, changes in the administrations, new appointments, elections coming up soon. So we sort of already, try and stay on track with actually what's going on. It's very easy to be in your bubble and be like, oh, I'm an investor, I'm just going to look at the numbers and then make the right decisions. But you do have to be quite conscious and cognizant of, world politics, not just, we're not isolated in Nigeria, right? I think everybody in the room, obviously, I'm sure has been following what's going on, since the most recent US elections and the change in administration and sort of the ripple effects that has had on the global economy, global markets, but also on, Nigeria as a country, some of the policies that have been influenced, some of the market dynamics that have been fundamentally influenced, some of the new opportunities that have suddenly risen up. So for us, it's not necessarily sectors that we'd like to avoid. It's really more around, let us be open-eyed, bushy-tailed with regards to what's going on. Don't be caught napping. I like what Mudia spoke about earlier, which was about, when our current administration took office, and literally one of the first things that, was done was that the naira was floated. And permit me to say that shouldn't have come as a surprise. Did we expect it to happen literally on day one of the administration? Maybe not. Did we expect there to be a devaluation? Yes, we did. And so for us, we had already factored that into our models. We didn't know what it was going to look like, right? I think even the best sort of forecasts sort of miss those numbers a little bit. But if you stay close to what's happening, typically there's indicators, leading indicators that will allow you to not always avoid, but at least have some risk mitigating or hedging strategies in place that you can very quickly, especially if you're nimble, fall back on to protect yourself and your founders. So we do share that information with our founders as well, and vice versa.
Thank you. So I have a question for Dipankar. The question that Mudia has already answered. In your current business, did you have to make any pivot, to grow or to remain profitable or to scale in the last 1 or 2 years? Yes, you.
Make a pivot in the last few years. So I think working towards profitability is a journey. And like we mentioned, at a certain stage, you're investing into building the infrastructure. And when you feel you have the infrastructure, you focus on getting stronger unit economics and better performances from the ecosystem that you have built. I think last 2 years have been, we've all faced it. In the last 2 years, there was a mix between survival and growth, right? Every one of us was facing it. If you can survive, that's the only way you can grow. And it was super important for each company to take some of the tough decisions. These decisions could have been about expansion. These decisions could have been about manpower. These decisions could have been about the growth journey of the business. And I think in the last few years, we have taken those decisions. We have avoided categories which have low margins. We have focused on those categories where the existing pool of infrastructure. So we did not get into cold storage, moving meat, chicken, fish, specifically because the infrastructure is harder to aggregate together on a single platform, and we moved with CPG because that was more accessible. These were decisions that were made to consciously build the model. And I think one of the more important decisions we all took in different businesses as founders was ensuring that we are not throwing money behind bad decisions. Calling out a bad decision is a very tough one, because it's a very high chance that you were the one who took that decision. And after a few months, when you have to call it a bad decision, it requires you to have clarity to announce that out. Negative margins or the race to GMV was a decision that many companies took, and many companies were motivated with great valuations to run that path, and correcting that path was a tough one. It took some time when everyone's language changed from this is my GMV and this is my multiple to this is the number of months required to become profitable. I think each one of us has seen that journey in the last 2 years and that transition. So we also did those, and we were happy and lucky we could take the tough decisions at the right time and come through it.
Thank you so much for sharing. I would like to ask Biola a question, and it's focused on investor sentiment. What would you say founders get wrong, and what do investors really want to see?
What do founders get wrong? Once again, I feel like there are a lot of different things that different investors look for. I think one of the things that actually the minister said earlier that I thought was so important was around talent and team. And I think that when we are building in the beginning, a lot of times you're brainstorming with people, you know, it's familiar, and you start to build a team. I think sometimes one of the things is when to change your team, when to bring the right team members on, when to step aside. I think these are areas that become very embedded into the founder's journey and also into the founder's decision making. And I think sometimes it's very difficult to decouple that. And I think this is where really good investors can come in and really help you and say, look, you're really, because you need you need to be a different person at different stages of your business. I think this is the area where a lot of people don't spend enough time. I'll give a real illustration. There was a founder that we were engaged in, and we said, we think that it could be a good time for you to have a coach. Founder is like, coach, me that I've been coming with this business since nobody helped me. No, I don't need a coach. So I was like, give it a try. And so, because we felt like as investors, we just weren't getting through. So founder took on this coach, 3 months later says it's the best thing that's ever happened. And the founder then says, I want to recommend this to other people, other founders. And so I think the biggest thing that you want to see as an investor is that this is a founder that can transform and build the right team. Because it's not the same team that you build with in your living room that you need to build with in the boardroom. I think that would be one of the things I say. Thank you.
Please, if you're going to clap, please clap for Biola. He's giving you insider tips into what founders need to know. All right, so.
But actually, I did want to add a little bit of to policy and regulatory environment and how that also unlocks different opportunities and why it's important for investors to also be open. One of the things, one of the sectors, I've been digging into climate, and I think you were talking about day one of the subsidies being, of the subsidy being removed. That became an also opportunity to unlock a lot of clean energy opportunities that we didn't have before. Energy was very affordable in Nigeria when you got it. Petrol was very affordable. Today, that's changing. That has now created an opportunity that we didn't see in Nigeria or West Africa before, which is really in solar, really in clean energy. This is an also opportunity to accelerate clean energy adoption. Also, the subsidies that were gone have now come back to subsidize clean energy. And once again, I think that with Asarock saying that they're going solar, that also creates a whole new education in the country. And so I think this is where sectors that you might not have seen opportunities can unlock themselves. So I think that this is why investors have to just also be open and keep their, sort of be open to what is coming down the pike and what is the opportunity in 5 years. Just to add that too. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like you to speak in 1 minute or more. Founders who feel they are stuck in between building the product and monetizing. There's an ever-building cycle of I'm trying to build, it's not ready, version 1, 2, and 3, as against what's your traction? I'm still building. So how do you navigate that stage of building and trying to get early traction? Fabiola, actually. Oh. Yes.
We have two founders on the panel. Me, I just come and tell people what not to be doing. They should tell us how they do it.
Can answer
So
it.
no. I really do think that this is. You guys are you're in the trenches every day, building and testing.
So you mentioned about constantly building new versions while trying to find a fit. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or find profitability?
PMF, yeah, traction.
Okay, traction. Yes. Look, I think the most important thing in the beginning is to find product market fit, right? I don't know if we speak about that enough, right? Because you cannot be building new versions when you don't even know what the market wants, right? For all the products we've built internally in Matter, version 2 is always because we looked at version 1 and the market said, we need these new features or we need this thing to have the ability to do this. And then you build a version 2. And off the back of that, you build a version 3. So I think the most important thing is for every stage of growth of your product or the products you build, you find product market fit.
Thank you.
I will take the other side of the spectrum, which is the early stage, you're looking for product market fit. And once you get that, you get some more money, you can experiment more. But the next stage is the difference between making a company. So now you have a tech team and you have to keep that tech team occupied. So you continue to build without having a real connect with your customer. So you're paying salaries, you have a tech team, you have to tell your investors what you have built, what you have innovated, but slowly you're moving away from solving the problem. And I think a bigger thing that I would request my investors on the panel is, I don't think we should focus a lot on building companies as founders. We should focus solely on solving a problem till a certain stage. If you're solving a problem, then you will try and build everything that is required to solve that problem. When when they invested, when Ventures platform invested in us, we were not an embedded finance company. We did not do lending. We did not do payments. We came to a stage where collections from our retailers was a pain for us. Every day from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., reconciliations between van drivers are going on. And every day, crazy amount of time is being wasted for everyone. We decided to create a wallet. It was never part of our journey to go into fintech or embedded finance. We were very clear we'll do B2B commerce. But it was a problem that needed to be solved, and fortunately, unfortunately, there was no one at that time providing that service to us. So we stepped in to solve it. When we solved it, we realized there is another problem, which was the problem around credit. 65% of our retailers were not financially included. So nobody would give them credit, even though they knew exactly what to buy with that credit. Now, in this journey, the product market fit is brilliant. You need it to move forward. But after a certain stage, it's very important for you to invest closer to solving the problem rather than building a company and what's fancy. I think it's a very thin move. Once you start moving towards building a company,
Yes,
it's a very different direction. Thank you.
I think your examples, can we give a round of applause to him? I think your practical examples were spot on. I love the growth. B2B commerce, then we had a problem because we needed to provide payments. From payments, micro-lending, and then maybe tomorrow cross-border. But basically, it's demand-generated product creation. It's not products before demand, it's demand before products. And that's just brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we're getting to the end of the session, and I would just like if each panelist can give, 30 seconds, 1 minute, quick tips or quick advice on profits. If you had only one thing to say to a founder on profits, what is that one thing that you don't want them to forget?
Yeah, I'll start. I think just that one thing would be stop subsidizing your mistakes in the business as a founder. Be very clear, it'll take you closer to profitability at the earliest. The toughest of the decisions that are there on the table, take them today. Don't delay them. Oh, we need to do this, but we can't do it now. We will do it in the next 3 months. I think those are the most difficult problems. If you find a way to solve them today, gives you a great growth journey.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I agree with you on that, because sometimes you find that the things that take away from your profitability are the difficult decisions you have to make. We once had to, and I'm not going to mention which, but we had to shut down a country that we're operating in because even though there was potential in the market, it wasn't bringing in the kind of profitability we wanted. It was, on the contrary, we were generating losses. It was difficult because you think about what people will say, but that decision stabilizes you and increases your profitability. So make the hard decisions.
Make them fast.
Yeah, make them fast. Yeah.
I would just say, be good stewards of money that has been entrusted to you, and capital efficiency. I mean, investments are not, it's not free money.
To the founders here, because maybe there are not a lot of founders there, but there are founders there. Just don't be afraid of making mistakes. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to make a lot of them. And just pray that you don't make the mistake that would destroy you. And the way to understand that is to have a mental model of making decisions. There's some decisions that you can make that is reversible. There's some doors you get in, it's a two-way door. You can come back. Don't be afraid of making mistakes in that door. Opening up a new country, launching in Abuja, you can reverse them and you can quickly stop them when you know that you've made a mistake. The ones that you have to be careful about is one-way door. Where you go in this way, you cannot come back anymore. That's the one you want to spend most of your time thinking through before you do it. But and there are only one or two of those decisions, i.e., putting all your money into a particular product or whatever. But most decisions that you make as a founder are two-way doors. So don't be afraid. And quickly turn back if you've made a mistake. But don't be afraid of making mistake.
Thank you. So in conclusion.
So I'd say communication is key. Sounds weird when we talk about profit, but you can't solve all challenges in life yourself, and the same goes for your business. You have, especially if you're venture-backed, you have incredible investors in your back pocket that you can rely on, that you can call on, that you can ask for counsel, guidance, suggestions, advice. You can ask for their teams. You can say, hey, can we sit on my financial model? I just can't hack this. And if you do communicate very quickly, you'll be surprised how quickly you can then actually reach to a different solution maybe. Maybe you do need to pivot. Maybe your margins aren't where they need to sit. Maybe your team is inflated. There's so many, different permutations of, where we could sit more efficiently, for instance. So when we're chasing profitability, it's really key to just, be obsessed with leveraging who you have in your back pocket, but you've got to communicate with them. So communication is actually key.
Thank you so much. Can we please give a round of applause to my beautiful panel? So in less than 2 minutes, I'll try and do a brief recap. I think part of the conversations that struck a chord with me was when Dr. Dotun shared about 3 types of economics: margin economics, unit economics, and EBITDA. I felt that was very instructive. I liked when Deepaka spoke about solve a problem. Stop creating fancy products. Solve a problem. Stop adding features. Focus on solving a problem. When you follow the problem, you see the money. When you follow the money, you grow. Very basic science, right? I liked your examples of shutting down, pivoting, making those hard decisions and not being in denial because you want your product to work at all costs, and then you ended up shutting down. I like the conversations that Biola shared about it's not about the big sectors, it's about what type of business model and what type of company is it. Is it a foundational company? Are they building infrastructure? Or are they riding on existing infrastructure, right? I liked when Amshim spoke about don't paint everybody with the same paintbrush. Fintechs are making money, fintechs are losing money, contextualize the conversations so that you don't take the wrong feedback. We're communicating the right thing. I think we've all shared amazing practical things. I loved all the examples you shared as founders, personal examples. I feel founders should share more, so that people don't think that it's all rosy. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Please, can you give them a round of applause? So we're about to wrap up, but we would like to entertain some questions from the audience. If we have 1 or 2 people who are brave enough to get a mic, I think there's a mic that can be given to the audience.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I'd like to ask a question as regard expansion into other countries. Like you said, sir, you had to close down because of some certain reasons. And these are some of the things as a startup company we also want to look out for. What are the factors we need to consider, and what are the important decisions we need to make in terms of expansion to other countries? And by the way, the service I'm talking about is also related to providing a marketplace for recyclables. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Look, I'm going to say that I've been very fortunate, or I have been very fortunate to have learned from many of my friends who have gone before me who were founders. And so when we started expanding, one of the things I was very, very careful about was to make sure that the cost of expansion wasn't something that could cripple our company, right? And because of the nature of our business, it is possible for us to expand into the market with partnerships and purely from a transactional perspective. Because we're a digital marketplace, right? All you have to have is demand in that market. You have a central source point of supply for all your suppliers, and you supply into that market, right? It was very instructive for us. So the cost of expansion was drastically minimized. Now, this may not work for every business. It will not work for every business. So in expanding, you have to make sure that you understand I cannot overstress how important it is for you to understand the market that you're expanding into. Because if you don't understand that market, I've seen businesses where the single act of expanding to a market, where they don't understand the policies, the nuances of that market, completely shut down the company. So it's important for you to understand the markets that you're going into, to have a very specific strategy, right? At the same time, be aware of the fact that if your strategy doesn't work, or if you find out that you have a proper lack of understanding of that market, you have to be able to retreat, right? That I would say is the most important thing.
Thank you so much for sharing. Do we have one more person who's brave enough to ask a question, or are we good? Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panel, for your time.
Let's put our hands together for them one last time. And thank you to the partners for joining this picture. And shortly after this picture, there'll be a presentation of gifts, and we'll move on to the next panel session. Could the panelists stay on stage? There's a presentation of gifts for you. Thank you very much to our panelists and our very able moderator for that insightful session. Next up, our panel will be focused on innovation and regulation, which is one of the most critical dynamics in our ecosystem. And moderating this panel will be Morayo Adebayo Adisa, who is the Director, Government Affairs and Policy at MasterCard West Africa. Let's put our hands together for her. Morayo will introduce her panelists. We can keep the claps going as she makes her way on stage, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to moderate this next panel, but before we start, I'd like to please invite upstage Mr. Olatibosun Alake, Lagos State Commissioner for Innovation, Science and Technology. Please, a round of applause for Mr. Olatibosun. Next, we have Ms. Florence Abebe, Head Anti-Competition Practices Department, Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. A round of applause, please. Clap if you're clapping.
Yeah, check, check, check. Hey,
Thank
check.
you.
Yeah, check.
Next,
check.
we have Mr.
Hey,
Ezichim Onweagba.
yeah.
I hope I
Check,
pronounced that right. Head of Global Partnerships, Quidax Technology. Please, let's keep the applause going, please. Thank you. I promise you this is a very interesting panel. Finally, we have joining us Mr. Johnson Oyewo, Senior Manager, Regulatory Affairs, MTN. Hello. Thank you very much. Our assignment today is a very simple one, but it builds up on, the conversations that have happened today. Innovation and regulation, finding common ground. So the assignment that this panel has is to find that common ground. To start us off, I want to leave us with 3 data sets. In Q1 alone, Q1 2025, Nigerian startups are said to have raised over $100 million, maintaining our position as top destination for tech investment in Africa. The second data point is that beyond funding, the sector now contributes upwards of 17% to Nigeria's GDP. Now, the last data point, which perhaps tech founders here would agree with, is that a recent study found that 30% of startup founders cited regulation as a major barrier to growth. So the assignment we have today, this panel, as you see, has regulators and innovators here. So the assignment we have today is really to unpack how can we move from that friction point to a point where we're collaborating, we're co-creating, and moving the sector forward. And I'm going to start this conversation with the Honorable Commissioner. And my first question to you, Honorable Commissioner, is, what is Lagos State doing to foster innovation while ensuring responsible governance?
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. It's a little low. Okay. Hello? Same thing. Okay, but you can, okay, can you hear me now? Okay, thank you for the question. It's great to be here. So how has Lagos State been sort of supporting the ecosystem from a policy perspective? So I first of all came in as special advisor to the governor in 2019. That was the first time we set up an innovation fund to try and support entrepreneurs in the ecosystem and sort of like to help accelerate. Prior to that, we had actually been also sort of enabling entrepreneurs through our Lagos Innovates voucher program. So for entrepreneurs that need access to internet services, a hot desk at a co-working space or an innovation hub, and had needed access to electricity as well. So we had the hub voucher program. So that was being run by the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. But it was in 2019 we started the first innovation fund for Lagos. And in parallel to that, we also started the first R&D fund for universities as well to try and, because in our mind, innovation also goes down to the ideation and experimentation stage. Because if you look around the world, most breakthrough technologies have come from the university circuit, right? Google itself was a research project that was enabled by professors and even venture companies that happen to be in the university circuit as well. Same thing with Facebook as well, came out of the university at Harvard. So we thought from a policy and execution standpoint, we thought we had to enable the ecosystem. Of course, when you look at areas like fintech and all of that, that has significant funding. But our fund focuses mainly on underfunded areas. And so when you look at areas like construction tech, for instance, or circular economy and climate change, AI for local languages, right? And so our fund focuses on those areas, e-commerce and agri-tech as well. That's not to say we don't fund fintech, but we purely focus, or we primarily focus on underfunded areas. But these are executive orders, these are policies that can change. But what we've done now is to try and enshrine this, or what we are trying to do is try and enshrine this into law, right? How do we enshrine innovation into law? And 2 days ago, we had a stakeholder session on the Lagos Innovation Bill. And the Lagos Innovation Bill really seeks to establish innovation through law and enable the pipeline of innovation by coordinating all the nodes. So demand-driven research and development, right? How does industry connect to academia, right? How do the venture and funders, private equity and all of that, how are they placed in centers of excellence where research and experimentation is happening? What are some of the facilitation you can give to startups to enable them get access to permits faster, right? So the innovation bill actually deals with all of those stipulations, and we are looking to hopefully pass it latest by first quarter of next year, so that innovation becomes law and an economic priority. So that's kind of like the trajectory we've been following.
Thank you so very much. Florence, over to you. What would you say are the most pressing regulatory concerns around emerging technologies from a competition and consumer protection standpoint? I know that the FCCPC is doing a lot in that side, but yeah.
Thanks a lot, Mariah. And let me take this opportunity to also thank the TMT team, DOA, for bringing me here. It's always a great opportunity to speak on behalf of FCCPC. A lot of the time, I tend to be around people that don't know much about the kind of work that we do. So this is such a great opportunity. Let me start by saying that our greatest concern has been really balancing the benefits of innovation with consumer protection. A lot of the time we have to ask ourselves, all of these benefits is at what cost to the consumer and to the market itself? We're so used to our traditional markets, and we've done, in terms of institutional strength, even at the FCCPC, we are more consumer protection because of the years that we have had to operationalize consumer protection. It's different with respect to competition. And so we're seeing that with the proliferation of the digital economy, we are stretched a bit because we're now at a place where it appears that consumers are better protected in the traditional markets than in the digital market. Now, to bring it home a bit, let's look at consumer protection with respect to dark patterns, for instance, misleading representations, deceptive advertisements. We're seeing it a lot. You order something online and what's coming to you is different, either in color, because they've called it apple green, and you're expecting something a bit, lighter, but it's darker. We're talking about the potential for self-preferencing, privacy issues, new businesses not having access to critical data and information. We're talking about dominant parties sort of creating some kind of foreclosure that makes it difficult for new entrants to come in and be able to and be sustainable in the space, because we have some godfathers that have entered, or grandfathers that have entered the space much longer. So from a competition perspective, our concerns would be around balancing that innovation with consumer welfare and the benefits to the market in general. It would be around potential abuse of dominance because of these, more incumbent businesses. And it would be around, the information to the consumers, are you providing enough information, and is the information deceptive? Is it misleading? What kind of unfair business practices have you developed that makes it difficult for consumers to make informed choices, or makes it difficult for smaller businesses to come in and be able to play on the same level playing field that we seek to create?
Thank you very much, Florence. So now that we've heard from the regulators, Florence and Honorable Commissioner, I like what I'm hearing from Honorable Commissioner about funding the underfunded sectors, because fintechs, health techs, those are attracting the money, but there are areas